only use 5% solar energy. And some of you may know, we also have, El Paso Electric has surcharges for households that do have solar panels. So essentially, we're taxing folks for harnessing their own energy from the sun in the way that we should all be doing, right? And like Matthew said, this is meant to be interactive. So if you all have any other concerns that you've seen that you feel are important as it relates to our air quality or water scarcity or quality, as well as our air quality, the pollutants that you all feel concerns that you all feel are important to bring up in this roundtable, please raise your hand and we'll discuss. Another concern that we feel that we need to address through our policy is that are addressing our air quality. We're the 12th worst polluted city in the country when it comes to our ozone pollution. And despite this, because of EPA regulation loopholes, our El Paso is considered to be at an attainable level, which means that according to the EPA, air pollution in El Paso was at a reasonable level. We were not breaking any regulations according to their own standards, right? But we don't have many mechanisms to measure our air quality. We don't have many air monitors in town. We don't have many ways to say, actually, EPA, you're wrong. We have the data. And this is done by design, right? So that's a concern that we as Sunrise identified and during our brainstorming process for the climate charter, is that we don't have these mechanisms to call them out on their lives.
Doesn't UT have those measurements?
They have a handful of monitors, but they're also Utah property, right? So
And they won't share?
they're very.
Well, a lot of it is self-reported from the industry.
Mhm.
So for when it comes to like the gas plants, the refinery. And the other part is they blame a lot of the pollution from Juarez.
Mhm.
So the corporations say, oh, it's not us, even though we're pumping out VOCs and methane and greenhouse gas. Don't look at us. Let's blame Juarez because we are obviously not polluting, right? So that's part of the issue. Not enough people are studying it. And the more we study it, like the effects that Sarco had, right? As you mentioned, Denise? Diana, as Diana mentioned, the more we study it, the more we find out it's a big problem.
And Marathon also was asking for permission to pollute more. Do you know?
Absolutely,
They
always.
win.
They almost always win. They almost always, when polluters want permission from the government to pollute more, and they almost always get this permit. And that's part of the problem.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that brings us to a point, right? Like we can see that there's pollution. We know that there are areas of town in which children have higher asthma rates than other sides of town, particularly closer to the ports of entry, right? Because of the high traffic of those trucks that are coming through international commerce. So anecdotally, I think as El Pasoans, we can identify that our air quality is poor and there's something that we need to do about it. However, the EPA, through those loopholes and the lack of data, can say, no, everything's fine. And if there's an issue, it's because of Juarez, not because of El Paso. So our goal when drafting our policy was to develop accountability processes. So this is no longer an issue, right? And another issue that another resource that we want to protect through our policy is our water. We live in a desert region. We're projected to run out of water if we keep pumping our aquifers at the current rates that we're currently going through. So we need to protect our water as El Pasoans. And we also know that, as I mentioned, the Permian Basin is a major powerhouse in fracking, and they're projected to continue, not just continue the current rates of fracking, but actually increase. And fracking, you require a lot of water to do that process, right? So if they continue as they're planning to, we can deduce that they're gonna run out of water, they're gonna start looking for other water resources. And we're 4 hours away, so they're gonna come knocking to our door, to Paso Water, asking for access to our water. So we wanna protect that proactively for when that, if that were to be the case.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think I remember maybe 8, 9 years ago that there was attempted to actually frack internal Paso County and Far East Paso County because they felt that, there was a possibility of oil there. Have you ever investigated whether that is something that is still possible and not necessarily 4 hours from here, but actually in the county?
I think most of the oil exploration projects have failed. Thankfully, like just by sheer luck, we don't live in an area where there is oil. Otherwise, we would be living with even more pollution, even more water scarcity. But part of what makes the Prop K powerful, I'm skipping a little ahead, is that it, as a city, like Anna said, this is all about controlling our own resources as a city, right? So let's say the Permian Basin starts inching closer and closer and closer from Odessa, and it gets closer to our region. We can say, you cannot use our water that we need for our city for your fossil fuel project. So if it is the case that in the future these exploration projects are successful, and they start drilling closer to Horizon or Clint or Fabens, they won't be able to use our water, which is really important because right now in the Permian, they're pumping out 5.5 million barrels of oil every day from that region. Every day. That's how much barrels of oil they're using. All of that, every barrel that they use, they need water. More than 7 barrels of water for every barrel of oil. And this extreme level of production, it's projected to double by 2030. So the water demand, so to speak, in this region is going to skyrocket. And if we don't have this in place, we don't have that protection. We don't have that shield for our water. But yeah, if you want to.
So why do we feel that these resources are threatened right now?
Because they are.
But who is causing those resources to be threatened?
Extraction. Well, the ones we just talked about,
Yeah,
marathon, fossil fuel.
Yeah, so just prioritize, for example, with
Golf course.
and it's generally just prioritizing like profit over community health, right? For example, with the trucks, prioritizing international commerce over having these major trucks go right next to Douglas Elementary School, right? So prioritizing the money of the few over the health of all, right? So that's we wanted to keep checks on the fossil fuel oligarchs in town who are leading to these problems, who are major contributors to pollution. And now we can go over how we as a brainstorming group of this policy decided to address these issues with input from community groups as well as attorneys through a lengthy drafting period. If we go to section 9.8, this is our solar generation program. So this climate director shall create an annual solar power generation plan for the city of El Paso. This plan shall include a feasibility analysis to describe how the city can develop internal capacity to generate energy for the city through solar power. So now as a city, we will be mandated to start moving away from fossil fuel reliance. Firstly, it would only ask that, city-owned governments develop use solar power energy. It's not asking that us as citizens take on the burden of transitioning to solar energy. But now if like this, if city-owned governments are using solar energy, and also another section, another part of our policy is that those barriers to solar energy are removed, right? So then us as citizens it's more affordable for us to transition to solar energy. But we're not dictating that the community transition to solar energy, that you take out your gas stove from your home. What else? What other talking points? We're simply asking that the city would simply be responsible for their own buildings transitioning to solar energy. And again, those barriers are really keeping our community from being able to transition to solar energy. So lifting those barriers, but not placing burdens on the community members as we transition to solar energy. Again, and then if you guys want to look at more specifically at those the impediment section, removing those barriers, that would be section 9.13. Removing those financial, non-financial burdens that limit the purchase, use, and generation of renewable energy in El Paso. And when we discussed a lot, these checks for air pollution and making sure that we have the data, right? So we developed section 9.6 discusses in the 9.5, we would have the climate director will be responsible with providing the city council impact reports for city decisions. So for example, if we were to expand the freeway, the city director would have to draft an impact report on how expanding the freeway would lead to increased pollutants, et cetera, and additionally to an annual impact report on how the city is doing, identifying areas of higher pollutants in El Paso, so we can have that data and keep our polluters in check, right? And like Mel already touched on, in terms of water conservation, we want to conserve our water, make sure that we're protecting it from the fracking industry and keeping it in El Paso. So our policy would ban the sale of our water to outside fossil fuel projects outside of city limits. Again, keeping looking ahead, looking at those projection plans of how the Permian Basin projection is projected to expand, so we can protect our community in the situations. And yeah, so those are the 3 sections that discuss water, protecting our resources. I'll leave it. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm not waiting to maybe they're gonna think of something else.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we never think.
Yeah.
We're gonna have like a full.
Writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Anna. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is the economic impact of this. So I'm sure in the next door apps or the charter, the chamber reports, like we've heard a lot about this, about how this is going to crush the city and have a terrible economic impact. And that's something we hear a lot, like in the climate movement, whenever we're talking about like taking care of ourselves and taking care of like the people that exists in our community is too expensive, right? Or it's not worth the investment. And that is like a part of why this was drafted, because like we all believe that we are worth it, that we are worth like the investment in having clean water and having like air that we can breathe and not getting cancer and like not having asthma. Like we're worth the investment of that. But I just wanted to start off with like the problem again, and like see a show of hands. Who here has like been concerned about low wages in the city, or has had people had to leave to other cities because of low wages, or had friends and family members have to go and commute to Odessa and back because to go work in the oil fields, or in addition to that, like who here has had to like work a job that maybe pays a little bit more but has no safety protections, or has like no benefits, or has no security when you're in this job? Almost everybody, right? So like this is the reality that like we are existing in El Paso, and this is like the norm right now. So this is why this is drafted. So when we're talking about like getting into debates or fighting the charter or whatever, like we are drafting this because of the reality that exists here in El Paso, that everyone in this room, and then also all of our loved ones and family members have to deal with every day. So that is like where this comes from. And going into like who's responsible, once again, is like no surprise, the same people who are attacking the climate charter. And that is because it is on purpose. Like the reason that we have to commute to jobs, have to leave El Paso, the reason wages are so low, the reason we don't get healthcare with our jobs, the reason that we don't get union protections, like is on purpose. And the people who benefit from that make sure that that continues to exist. So I know a lot of times like we could feel climate anxiety, or we feel like you had mentioned, like this is the biggest fight that we have. And a lot of times it can feel overwhelming on an individual scale. But like why we drafted this is because it's actually not like our fault, and recycling isn't going to solve it. Like there are massive corporations and power players that are making sure that this is the reality that we live in. And this is what this climate charter aims to address. And it aims to address that mainly on this jobs front in Article 9.7. So if you look at 9.7, which is climate jobs. So the first part is annual goals for climate jobs. So instead of relying on the goodwill and the good graces of the companies that we already know aren't doing this and have never done this, have never invested in us and our people and making sure that we're good, there's actual goals and like guarantees for what they're doing. So an annual goal for climate jobs that the climate department would have to meet. The second part is preference for climate jobs when new funding comes available. Another thing that we hear a lot is like, we don't have money as a city. The city is bankrupt, the taxes are too high, we don't have enough. It's like a scarcity mindset that we are told to believe. And so this is addressing that and saying like, when we do get big projects, when we do get big funding, that it is talking about like the climate impact and how it's like affecting all of us and how we live our daily lives. The next part is transitioning current city employees to climate work. So in summary, like we have a lot of city employees right now that are doing stuff connected to EPE or connected to the fossil fuel industry. And this is prioritizing them in the transition to these climate jobs that we're doing. So as we know, like we talked about, this isn't individuals' faults. It's not our uncle's fault that goes to work in Odessa. It's not like the people who drive trucks' fault. It's not like all people's fault who don't recycle. Like it is a systemic problem that we are addressing with systemic reworking of how we work. It's not like any one person's fault. So like the people who work in the city aren't going to get mass laid off, aren't going to be fired. Like it's prioritizing them in the transition to like how we believe, how all of us here believe our city should work. And then the last part is preference for contractors who advance the city's climate policy. So that part is like when the city does business with contractors who are making sure that this is implemented, there's a preference for people who are moving along with these goals that we have in mind. So it's not like it incentivizes people to hit the goals along with the city. And these are how, this is the problem that we all agreed that we have, that we've seen, that exists here in El Paso. This is why these are specifically put into the climate charter. And this is how it addresses it. So that's like the jobs part and like the economic part that I know we've heard a lot of, especially attacking the climate charter. Cool. And then Miguel. Oh, yes. And this is a video that Miguel has done in his work. And I think this is just like so emblematic of how we are forced to deal with the decisions that the people in power make. So like Paul Foster, all the city manager, everyone who is Chase Bank, who is making it so that these things exist, they are not here like this man is. This is methane that Miguel's work uses a very fancy camera to track. And this is like cancer causing, this is basically poison that this guy is like injecting and taking hours after hours after hours, which many of us do, like in our work. And this like sums up why this charter is important. Because we don't have a choice in this. We don't have a choice to like soak up the pollution. We don't have a choice in like getting asthma because of like what the resources we're forced to use. And like, they aren't there. They aren't there. The people who are making the choices, the people who made this happen, they are not soaking up methane all day and being poisoned because they know it's not bad and they're making a choice. So this is like the climate charter is about like giving us the choice because no one should be able to or should have to like do this in their work or at our homes or wherever we're living. And that's like the reality that we're going through right now.
For all we know, this guy could be from El Paso. Like as Matthew mentioned, it's very common in our community for our family members and friends to go to Odessa because it's a huge economic driver. It's 40% of all oil comes from this region. So for all we know, this could be one of our family members, one of our friends. The last part that we're going to talk about is accountability for the energy economy locally. All right, quick poll. If you have to choose which one you like more, Pepsi or Coke?
Coke.
Who likes Pepsi more than Coke? Okay, we've got 3
Wow.
Pepsis. Coke? No, okay. All right. A lot of people have choices, right? When they go to they go to Walmart, okay, do I want Pepsi or do I want Coke? We do not have a choice for our electric grid. It's either El Paso Electric or El Paso Electric. It's either their rates or their rates only. That's a big problem. A lot of other cities get to choose. In Austin, for example, we all have to pay for rates. We all have to pay for electricity. There are in other communities, you get to choose which electric utility you want to support based on their energy goals, right? So in Austin, for example, you pay like a little extra, sometimes the same, for getting your electricity from renewable energy or wind. We don't have that. It's a monopoly. Our electric grid is a monopoly. That's a big problem. Also, our electric grid is a private company. This is actually an anomaly in most of Texas, where an electric grid is a monopoly and privatized. So our electric grid, unlike a lot of other grids, they get to make money from our need to use electricity. They have a captured market and they don't have any competition. There isn't clean El Paso Electric that they can compete against, that they can compete to drive down prices. And so we're living under a very unique and messed up situation where our electric grid has us hostage. We're also in a very unique situation because we have proximity to this massive oil field of the Permian. And because our electric grid is privatized, they understand how much of a profit opportunity this is. So El Paso Electric made a business decision years ago that they are not going to invest in solar. They're going to invest in fossil fuels. We have 3 major gas plants all around the city, not by accident, close to marginalized communities. In Far East El Paso, the Montana Vista gas plant. In Northeast El Paso and Chaparral, New Mexico, the Newman gas plant, and in Lower West Side by Sunland Park, the Rio Grande gas plant. So these are pollution-making machines. This one right here is Newman. You can see it there. So they made a decision. I'm going to profit from my proximity to this oil field and use gas plants. the way we get our electricity right now is through these. And they have the way it works is they get fracked gas from the Permian Basin through pipelines, and they put it through these machines that convert it into electricity. It uses a lot of water, it pollutes a lot. And the problem is they can do all of this because there's no oversight. No one is keeping them accountable. So this is why a bank you might have heard of called JP Morgan, they said, hey, El Paso Electric, you have an excellent money-making machine. I really like it. I want to purchase it. And that's why they did. That's why it was so attractive for this bank to control a grid. And this was back in 2019. A lot of the community fought back, and we said it's not a good idea to get our privatized monopoly even further privatized, even further interested in making money. That's going to be extracted and go to Wall Street. Our city did not have a climate department back then. It did not have a climate director. It did not have clean energy goals. It did not have a climate jobs mandate. And they said, okay, El Paso Electric, JP Morgan, do your thing, make your money. And that's part of the problem. One of the first things they did, no surprise, after they were bought by JP Morgan, they wanted to invest $163 million of our ratepayer money to purchase a new gas plant, a new generator in the Newman station, Newman 6. And this is a big problem. We have no leverage, we have no power, we have no say. Part of our vision of transitioning to renewable energies is going right to the source of the power of the people that have power to do that, which is our grid. That's why Prop K has two main solutions to this problem. There's the municipalization process, which is section 9 points. Nine point 10. 9.10, the beginning of municipalization. City of El Paso should employ all available efforts to convert El Paso Electric into municipal ownership. That would mean a drastic shift in the way the grid works. It means that instead of this company being interested mostly in making profits and then us afterwards, it would be the other way around. It would be us having a say over what decisions they make. So the next time they propose an idea to invest millions of dollars for even more fracking in the worst climate era, we can say no, because we have the decision power. It would also, so the actual municipalization is a process that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of research. The climate charter would make it a mandate for every year for the city to study how and what it will take, because we don't have all the answers. We need to study it. We need to have a department of our government specifically get dedicated to this, instead of us having to beg them to even consider it, right? So that's the first one. It begins the process of us having more say in our electricity. The second one is the Climate Commission, section 9.14. The Climate Commission is a mechanism by which the people, the movement, the 40,000 people that signed on to the climate charter, for us to drive the ship, for us to influence what the climate director does, how they do it, how the climate department acts. This commission is made up of community members with a specific preference for people impacted disproportionately by fossil fuel pollution. It gives us an opportunity to be in the room and drive the ship, drive the car. The commission would be made up of a community member from each one of the districts. And it is prohibited for any of these community members to be, for example, fossil fuel executives. So you can't work in the fossil fuel industry and be part of this. And this is how the climate charter can begin the decades-long, the years-long fight, the really important, deep-rooted mission of us having a say over El Paso Electric.
It's gonna be a decades-long fight, you think?
No, I meant to say the decades-long impact. So
Okay.
like what we do right now is gonna have
Yes.
have impact decades to come, right?
Yes.
Them building the gas plant is gonna reverberate through history, really. An example of this is like right now, these three main gas plants that they have online. El Paso Electric, even though they have all these fancy new commercials about how they're doing carbon free, have you all seen that? Fancy, awesome commercials, right? Okay, you would think that means they're going to, if they're going to be carbon free by 2045, you would mean that the gas plants would be offline, right? That's what one would assume. But if you look at El Paso Electric's own reports, they plan to shut the gas plants down by the year 2061. I would be in my 60s. Yeah, I would be in my 60s by the time, on their own pace, if they want to shut it down when, you know, cuando se les da una gana, right? When on their pace. And this is us saying, it's not about your profit. It's about our health. It's about our climate. So yeah, you're gonna have to do it quicker than that. I'll stop there.
Yes.
And we can go into,
Yes, and then we'll just do a quick summary and then we'll open it up for questions.
yeah,
Can you tell me where you're live streaming it so I can share it?
Yes, it's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube on the Sunrise El Paso the Sunrise El Paso pages.
Yes, cool. So yeah, that was a lot of information. It was like a lot to take in, and it's okay to feel like overwhelmed by this. So like in summary, like what we are trying to say with this, what we're trying to do with this is like, this is a designed systemic issue. Our reality is on purpose. It is not by accident that we're the 12th most polluted city in the country. It is not by accident that we have extremely high cancer rates. It is not by accident that Chase Bank, the largest bank in the world, chose our grid to come and buy because we don't have control over it. This is all on purpose. It's a design systemic issue, and it is only going to get worse. So that is why we drafted this. That is what Prop K is designed to solve. So I know that it's tempting to want to get into like debates and arguments and fight with the people who are profiting from this. But in reality, like what we were trying to say is like, these are not good faith attacks. They are profiting, they benefit so much more than we could imagine from the system that exists right now. They're making more money than most of us have ever seen combined because of the system that exists right now. And that is like what Prop K is aiming to solve. So all of us here like are a part of making those choices like Miguel talked about. Having some sort of a say. And I was thinking about it when Miguel said about Coke or Pepsi, but it's like if Pepsi now became $15 a can, then we would choose Coke. If El Paso Electric wants to charge you $400 for your electric bill, what are you gonna do? You're gonna pay it.
Yeah.
We're gonna pay it. If Western Refining wants to dump a bunch of water or a bunch of pollutants into our water, what are we gonna do? We're gonna cry. We're gonna get cancer. That's what we're gonna do. That's our choice right now. And that is what Prop K is like aiming to solve. So that's a summary of like what we went through today. And we thank you all for like going through this charter with us. I know it's like a very dense piece of material. But then we'll open it up to any questions on this part before we close out.
My first question was, is that somewhere? That's.
I used to be,
Oh.
yeah.
We're gonna
You
try to
run
get
out of
another
money
one.
or what?
Yeah.
We do not have the budget of the El Paso Chamber of Commerce, unfortunately.
But we can
But-
do graffiti art. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That really was my first question.
She knows the
Yeah.
guy, she knows the guy who does graffiti art.
The murals that we're talking about.
I guess like provision on monopolization, like if that, or if all this fails, when's the next time? Like, cause I know if these things fail, they can't go on referendum for like 3 years. Or something like that, can,
2 years.
Should-
Yeah,
What does that mean?
it can't come up for a vote on the
But
ballot
like
if it fails.
this specific document or like kind of similar idea?
Yeah, I was gonna ask,
Okay.
yeah, it can the city, in like the city council itself, like. Make rulings on stuff like this if this fails.
absolutely.
Yeah,
If we,
so,
if
yeah.
if we have actual community advocates,
Not to the charter,
very,
not to the charter,
Not to the charter.
not to the charter. They need policy action, but we cannot make the charter. Which is what y'all are.
right. No, yeah, that's a good point. This is,
Explain.
this, okay, so there are two basic like ways you can implement policy in the city government. This is like, city council can pass ordinances, they do a lot of that. And this, however, amending the charter is a deeper policy change, right? So it's the equivalent of like passing a bill through Congress versus amending the Constitution, right? This is really powerful. And so the question about where this can happen again, it took the community 40,000 signatures for us to get here, for us to place this in the ballot, right? So it's kind of like, it's a very important, heavy political moment that we all have like a really awesome opportunity to be a part of between now and May 6th, right? But my first point is we should not have needed to do this. This is not something that we needed to have done in the first place. If our city councilors actually cared about this, we wouldn't need to do this, right? So that brings up the other important piece, which is like, if and when we pass this is a tool that the city government can use, but we actually can't stop there. We need the movement to continue to pressure the government to use that tool. We need to continue to get our champions into office.
Okay, and I was also wondering, there was a new climate position created from the last midterms.
Right.
Are they, have you guys talked with them or in any way, or are they
Yeah,
helping out in any way, like pass or? I
Yeah.
don't know, within the city?
right.
I think since this is on the ballot, they can't talk to us or say that they endorse or not, anything like
Okay.
that. So
Yeah.
for the time being, we haven't needed this.
All right.
And what you're referring to is Prop C, right? That was past November. El Paso voters allocated, I believe it was around 5 million for a certain number of climate. They called it a climate action plan. Which is great. It's more green spaces, more bike spaces, more walkable programs. Awesome. But one of the things that the Chamber of Commerce does is say, you don't need this ambitious climate charter, which is going to threaten our profits. Look at this other thing. Look at Prop C, because that doesn't go to the root issue of changing our renewable energy goals, having more say in our electric grid. So that's something that opponents of this are using to claim this is redundant, right?
Do you have a comparison chart of what Prop C did and what Prop K does? That'd be.
We do not have that, but it's pretty, what Prop C does is very limited. I will say, like. It's not looking,
Infrastructure.
Right.
changes,
yeah,
improvements rather
Yeah.
than.
no climate department, no climate director, no climate commission, no municipalization process, no climate jobs. Protections, a lot of things that it doesn't have.
And I know you guys made the Chamber of Commerce's economic impact study. I know you guys produced data points
Oh,
to
yeah.
combat it. It's really hard to find, like I heard about it through the grapevine, but when I go through your guys' like Facebook page and stuff, that sort, I can't find it.
Okay,
And I think, that should be front and center, like everywhere, because everyone's being exposed to the bad faith conclusions of that
right,
impact study.
They almost want to like send you whatever they are writing so that you can reply to them.
okay, everyone, put this on your mobile devices. www.bit.ly/cc, like climate charter. Miss info. And there it is. Oh, whoops. So one of the big things that the climate that the chamber's doing is they are creating a distorted version of the climate department of the climate charter, and then they're attacking that, right? It's the classic straw man argument. You create this like distorted, exaggerated version of what you want to attack, and then you attack that because it's easy. So one of the things they're doing is they're saying they're claiming that this would result in people having to replace their cars with electric vehicles. Here's a challenge. Try to find the word vehicle or electric vehicle anywhere on here. And what they're doing is very disingenuous, which is say they're conflating on purpose our clean, renewable electric grid goals, which is 80% renewable by 2035, 100% by 2045. And they're saying that has to apply to your vehicle as well. From thin air, they're just inventing that as a way to distort the actual reality. So that's how they got to all of these ridiculous conclusions of how it's going to cost like half of the jobs in the city. That's ridiculous. The other thing is gas stoves, which is just like, that's just acting like, yeah, that's again conflating grid policy with home appliances. They were just doing it on.
Well, I think what he's saying is that under social media, the response is not front and center.
Yeah, you're right about that though.
So
Yes.
like in here, like I'm under Instagram, obviously the response is on the link tree, but it's not like a pin post where somebody can say like, hey, this is right away, I can do it.
Yeah.
Instead of taking multiple steps to go to that website. So that's easier, like if there's some sort of like right in front and center, pin on Facebook or Instagram or on it, that right away responses to the chambers plan on it. So you don't have to go to the link tree and then like look at the thing, so forth. It has to be front and center. I think that's his point.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I have a
Great
question.
point.
Can you repeat the website again?
www.bit.ly/miss,
CC.
oh yes, cc/cc misinfo. No, and that's a great point. That's a great point.
Because on your link tree is, I don't think that link to that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I don't think that could be ignored, that impact study, because El Paso Times, every major news, they're all reporting the conclusions of it. and there's not really much pushback, or, the exposure to how it's spelled.
Right.
And I will say one thing, like, we can definitely get it out front and center, and that's part of like the strategy. But I want to encourage everyone here in this room, like as we're talking with other people about it. As hard as it is to not engage in debates, because I want to like reflect on something like how many people in the past 3 years have had someone where you're arguing about the vaccine or COVID and you are throwing facts back and forth and engaging in a debate? And how many people were successful in like changing people's minds doing that?
Well, I wouldn't say that because people are usually dogmatic and irrational, but I'm a big proponent of engaging in these conversations on social media. You're not gonna be able to change that person's mind that you're debating, but there's a bunch of people reading it. And
Yeah.
if you're gonna see these talking points being refuted and addressing their bad logic, then just, everyday voters or young people who aren't informed are gonna see how they're incorrect. So I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent of engaging in logical discourse and refuting as much as possible on social media.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe on one-on-one for sure,
Yeah.
and maybe futile. To that extent, but if there's a community seeing that, and I would recommend people engage on social media and combating disinformation of all sorts.
Yeah.
On that note, also, there was like a poll that they were doing in the thing, and people want to vote what most of the people they know are going to vote for. Because most people don't want to like educate themselves and stuff. So, well, if almost everybody's going for this, I'm just gonna go for that. I'm gonna kind of like trust them. Like if you got like what was the contest thing that most people want something to be the answer, and then you go for that one.
Right.
So that's kind of like, I agree with you.
Yeah.
You don't convince nobody.
Yeah.
But if they see that there's like back and forth, that there's people on both sides, they might think, oh, maybe they're not so terrible at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, do we have any more? Because if not, then that's a great transition into the next part, is how we talk to
Okay.
people about this. But is there any other questions before we talk in?
I guess what other elected officials have spoken out about the climate crisis? It seems like no one has really taken a position. Council can't, but anyone else, state reps.
Former state rep, Jose Rodriguez. Big supporter of this. And that's one example. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and I will say on that, like,
Yeah.
there hasn't been many endorsements on either side, but what is very, very telling, very telling, and what like we got to is like. The people who profit, the Chamber of Commerce, the Republican congressperson that starts in Socorro and goes all the way to San Antonio. Like the people who are very, very tied to profiting off of our sickness are going against us. So that is like very telling in like who stands on either side of this. Greg Abbott, our thoughts on, or whatever our thoughts on that, but like those interests, those who want to like see the boom continue in the Permian Basin, who want to like see the sickness continue, are definitely very hard against this. And pushing like super strong like against us.
Who could endorse it? Because somebody said like not representatives or something, but is there anybody like public figure, like I heard about Jane Fonda,
Paso endorsed.
yes,
right? Maybe we can have that
Jane
more
Fonda.
out there, because like we're like about a month away from that.
Mhm.
So we need to get it more out there, not just on the neighborhood apps, and big people endorsing. So whoever is allowed to do that, maybe we could try to get, I know Vero Carvajal, I don't know, Veronica Escobar, the one can do it.
Yeah.
But Vero Carvajal probably is with us,
oh, absolutely, absolutely,
but she should be more public and stuff.
Yeah.
With the Kafner range thingy, all those people who were voting or signing, doing signatures for the Kafner range, that finally passed.
Yeah.
Everybody would probably be on our side, obviously.
yes,
Yes.
Yes. absolutely. Here's the thing, though. We're gonna need everyone in this room, because, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I think,
Oh.
Yeah, on that note, I haven't heard anything from the local Democratic Party. Have you guys reached out to them? Because, they should support efforts to combat climate change, but I haven't heard anything. Are they too close to the business interests here to take a stand on this, or what's happening with that.
Yeah. Our,
Yeah, they've endorsed it.
They've endorsed it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so that's what we're working on to get like mailers out and like
Oh, all right, that's good.
information out,
All
but
right.
yeah, definitely want to work with them and.
On that, why are the congresswoman speaking out against this? If the Republican is.
But she's Democrat, she cannot speak against it.
Oh,
She should.
should.
he should speak for it.
Speak for it.
Absolutely.
Veronica, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, she should.
Sponsored legislation that supports climate action.
But this particular proposition.
Not yet, but we've had meetings.
Not yet. Hopefully she can and she should. Yeah.
We could set up a lobby meeting if anybody's interested. Some of us have experience with lobbying.
Yeah.
Go directly.
Have any other cities done similar climate charters?
This is the first of its kind. We're breaking new ground here. This is, like, a lot of other cities have done their own climate plans, but this specifically was tailor-made for attacking our local power brokers, right? So it was uniquely designed for that. First of its kind, as far as we know, there is no other climate department. So we're kind of leading the country here.
Which is really exciting.
You guys say that it's the, you guys will say that it's the first in the nation, like if it passes, we're gonna be the first in the nation to have a climate charter, which if you guys vote for it, it will literally be making history.
We'll be making history.
Well,
Absolutely.
that and like something that we've heard a lot in the council meetings is like, especially water rights and municipalization is something that the Southwest in particular is gonna have to be dealing with in like a very, very real way for the next 10 to 15 years. As like Phoenix is expanding, LA is expanding, Tucson is expanding, and they're running out of water. And like the local business interests are making the decision on who should get water and who shouldn't. Like this is like part of a larger movement of like, we should decide that we get water, not Paul Foster.
Mhm. Mhm.
oh, I forgot. Yes,
Yes,
sorry, the municipalization of the electric, because people are saying that where it's proposed is to buy out EPA.
Mhm.
And that's not what I think is we're proposing, right?
No, it creates the goal for the city to figure out how to do it.
So we don't really know have a plan on that.
That is for the department to figure out. It's a big question, right? So it's like, instead of us trying to like figure that out, we're directing the city to figure out how to do it.
Because cities are supposed to know and are supposed to be able
Absolutely.
to do that. Can you
Absolutely.
Like a nationalization, municipalization, but they're gonna shout socialism.
Well,
Expropriation, yeah.
right, so here's the thing though, like, I think this goes back to the strategy of like fighting with the haters versus building more people that think like us, right? So the way we're thinking of it is like how we engage, how we should like be advocates is 20% fighting back against like claims like, oh, this is like totalitarian communism, right? We need to do that 20%, but 80% should be speaking to our neighbors, our community members who aren't gonna, who are, average, normal people, and they don't like live in this box of viewing things through hate, right? So that's how we can win, because we don't have the influence that these corporations have in our local news, but we do have influence in our friends, in our family, in our neighbors, and that's really the only advantage we have, right? It was one of the most popular things that people reacted to when we were actually getting signatures, having control over our electric grid. So even though the weirdo Republican congressman from San Antonio is saying, hey, this is communism, people here actually really like having power over their electric rates, right? So I think we could move on to,
No, go.
okay.
I'll say one last thing.
Yeah.
And that's like I know it's anxiety inducing to see like the headlines and stuff like this. But one thing that Ana and Miguel always say is like, there was more signatures, people who signed and agreed to this than every single city council rep got votes combined. So like it's on purpose again that we see the noise and we see like the people who are detracting from this. But like we know that 40,000 people signed on to this. 40,000 people said yes to this. And a lot of the council members got in office with 2,000 votes. So like it's easy to feel like the anxiety because it's on purpose that they want us to feel the anxiety that we have to fight with them. We have to get into the specifics. We have to do it. But we know that like we wouldn't be at this point if a huge amount of people in El Paso didn't already agree on this and didn't already say, yes, this is what I want.
Right. So, yeah, and for context, the previous May election, that was like a big issue for on the ballot, for the lost dog conservation. That was in 2019. Total number of votes, 20,000 total. So we got 40,000 people just to sign on to this. And so it really is as simple as a logistical process. How do we contact all of these people? How do we knock on their doors, call them, text them? That's it. That really is all we have to do to win, but we need a lot of help. And that's how you can volunteer.
Yeah, I think I feel a lot of energy from everyone, a lot of support and a lot of wanting to fight back the misinformation, which like you said, like it's important. But I think the most important thing for us is to talk to our community members, have genuine conversations about the meaningful positive impact that this policy can have in El Paso. So I'd like to invite all please to volunteer with Sunrise. We need everyone boots on the ground. Like you mentioned, we're a month away from early voting, right? So we really need to start to have these conversations, be out there, and they have the money, but we have the community support. We just need to mobilize that and empower people to come out to vote in May 6th. May elections are usually even more of a low voter turnout, and our community needs, I feel like we need to feel empowered and feel like our voices matter. I think we're used to, if voting for a politician, we are usually a little disillusioned, and we may feel, especially people our age may feel like their vote doesn't matter. But I think with this, we can see drastic change in our lives, drastic improvement, and I think the community recognizes that. They just need to be reminded of the power behind their vote. So I want to invite y'all to come out with us to do door knocking every weekend. We have several shifts, so please, after the presentation, we can sign you up for one of those shifts or a training, so you feel more confident and comfortable having these conversations with community members. We also have phone banking opportunities, and we can sign you up for those as well. If you rather just do outreach from the comfort of your home. And we also ask that you amplify our fight, share social media. We'll have that debunking social media post friend center for social media. Please share that very soon, I promise. And as well as helping us fundraising. We mentioned they have their investors, their funders. We're a grassroots organization, a grassroots campaign. So really, truly, every single dollar counts. So please donate to our campaign, so we can have flyers, mailers, and continue to spread the messaging of what actually is the climate charter and continue to fight the misinformation that we all mentioned here today.
If Lucy could talk about your experience in Canvas.
Yes.
Like, because we've Canvas, so I think that would help as well, because it's really scary. But like, yeah, let's think about it.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it's my first time ever doing something like that. It's been a beautiful experience, and I don't want to stop here. Like once the competition passes, like I want to do something similar to where I go out and help people get registered to vote, because I was a person that wasn't even registered to vote. So through this competition, I've just learned that my voice is important, and I just know that there's a lot of people out there that felt like I have felt, that feel how I have felt in the past. So yeah, I don't think it stops here. And I'm just grateful for this experience, and I hope a lot of people do give themselves the opportunity to do such thing, because it helps you become those composer.
Yeah, and I guess I can kind of, I have really started, I started canvassing by myself this week, and it was really scary. But I'm very passionate about this, and I feel like, just speaking about it and like spreading the education of like all the things like, you know, that everyone's scared of, like not having jobs and all that, like usually people will listen, and also, talking about like my own story where I actually, I think it was, I don't know how long ago it was, I think it was last semester. I missed like a whole week of school because I felt really sick, and like my whole body was like super like I couldn't get out of bed. And I felt like I had a cold. I went to my doctor and he said, "You don't have a cold. He's like, you have allergies." And I was like, what? And like, I literally missed a whole week of school because of that. And so, if you talk to the community and you tell them, you know, like you have anyone in your family who has cancer, who struggles with allergies and all that, because I think it's important for us to educate the public that, you know, what they feel and what they've experienced is because of this, you know, like they have a voice in it. And yeah, like it's scary at first, but yeah, we'll go through trainings and stuff like that. But it would really help if you guys could help us spread the word, because all of it is just education, honestly, just education.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Thank you, everyone.
If I can share, if you guys are well experienced on talking about the climate charter, we also have a lot of events that you can come to with Eco El Paso. I really want people to come and really meet other people who are already environmentalists who might not have heard about the climate charter, to get them to be into it. So I brought a couple of events that we're hosting throughout April. We've got a tree information session about our tree planting project. This is next Sunday. This is an educational event for like high school, middle school level kids, so they can learn about it. And then, question, do we have voter registrars in the room? People who
No,
are.
we're trying really hard to get like a whole thing hung.
Yeah.
I really want to learn how to.
That'd be great.
Well, during the.
Yeah.
I run those trainings,
Oh, great.
so obviously I'm here on like a nonpartisan. I know this isn't a party issue, but.
Yeah.
One way or the other, I wouldn't, you know, like. The key to this is to get voters excited about it, right?
Yes.
So even if it's a fraction of those 40,000, that should be good enough to get this. Sort of the strategy. So I would, right now, like if you guys go on the website, there's a form to fill out all that, I would get that email. I would get that form and we can plan the video so that then you guys go out and register folks. There's deadlines and all that. We have already voting coming up, so it's like a huge urgency.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is it too late to register votes for this?
If you don't know when it's going, maybe we can work it out. But if we don't do it, then like 2 weeks before the voting starts, I stop doing those trainings and we start doing after the election, so. The deadline to register folks to vote is April 6th, 30 days before May 6th, in order for them to be able to be fully registered.
I also, I've talked to like a lot of the students that you have, and there are some who are not registered, and I'm like, well, would this be something you would like to do? And so I was like, okay, like what if I were to be able to register you? And so I get their numbers, like, yeah, of course. And so I'm getting like a list of people who do want to vote and want to be registered.
Is it allowed to put like a booth, like a Bicentennial Plaza?
There are a lot of student organizations who do that, who are doing that already, so we'll group her up with them, so we'll table their events, while they're registering people to vote, we'll be there talking about.
Okay.
One quick question.